Claude just released Managed Agents, and this is their harness for long-running agents. And this is something I actually have a lot of experience in. A few months ago, I released this video showing the difference between running Claude in the CLI versus using a long-running harness. And following that, I actually built my very own long-running harness application called AutoForge. And by the way, you can use this for free. What it does is you can give it a really complicated task, like, build an entire application with hundreds of features, and this app will run for hours, if not days or weeks, until that application is complete. So of course, I'm really interested to see what Claude Managed Agents are all about. They very specifically say that Claude Managed Agents are ideal for long-running tasks and asynchronous work. Claude Managed Agents provide a harness and infrastructure for running Claude as an autonomous agent. Now, this infrastructure part is really interesting. If you've ever used AutoForge or Automaker or AutoClaude or any of these tools, even Paperclip or whatever, they do take up a lot of resources on the machine that they're running on. So I think that Claude providing the infrastructure is actually a really cool idea. So instead of you building your own agent loop, so whether that's Ralph or something complex like AutoForge, you get a fully managed environment where Claude can read files, run commands, browse the web, and execute code securely. The harness supports built-in prompt caching, compaction, and other performance optimizations for high-quality, efficient agent output. And that's the thing, a lot of these tools and harnesses are really bad at implementing prompt caching. So you end up burning through your tokens really quickly, and it gets super expensive. So in this video, we'll build our own application called Ship It. This is a tool where you can describe any product that you want to build, and that tool is actually going to use the Managed Agent solution from Claude to build out a working application for us. So let's go through everything together. Claude Managed Agents are built around 4 concepts. The agent, which makes sense. For the agent, we specify the model. It's going to be like Opus or Sonnet or Haiku. We can provide a system prompt, the tools that it's supposed to have access to, any MCP servers, and agent skills. Then we will define the environment in which that agent needs to run. Like, for example, is this a Python project? It's a TypeScript. What packages should be installed? Does it have network access? And so on. Then there's a concept of sessions. A session is a running agent instance within an environment, which is not really surprising when we open up Claude Code in our terminal. That is also called a session. Then we've got events, messages exchanged between your application and the agent. So this is really a critical component. How all of this is going to work is that we're going to build a UI wrapper for our application, but any AI inference, so interacting with the actual agent, is going to happen on Anthropic's servers. So it's sitting in their environment. That is really where all the heavy lifting is going to happen. We're simply receiving the feedback from the agent and displaying it to our users. Alright, so let's have a look at the prerequisites. You will need an Anthropic console account and an API key. At this stage, this does not work with your Claude Code subscription, so you will have to pay for your API key usage. To create an API key, simply go to platform.claude.com and sign into your account. Then go to Get API Key. Then from the screen, let's create a new key. I'll just call this one Managed Agents Demo. Let's add it. And now we can copy this key and store it in a safe place. Alright, now that we've got our API key, how do we actually use Managed Agents? Now there's basically 3 different solutions. We've got the CLI tool, we've got the SDK, and we also have the console. Let's start with the console, as this is probably the easiest way to access these agents. Now, the console is really meant for prototyping. The idea is for us to build our own little harness that we can use personally or sell to clients. But the console is just an easy way to kind of test this all out to see how it all works. But whether you're using the console, the CLI tool, or the SDK, they're all hitting the exact same functionality and endpoints. In order to access the console, we can simply click on this visual interface link in the documentation. All you have to do is go to platform.claude.com, then scroll down to Managed Agents and click on Quick Start. From here, we can simply describe the kind of agent that we would like to create or start with an existing template. For example, let's choose this structured extractor. And here we can see a YAML or JSON version of what this agent is going to look like. So it's a model that's being used under the hood, the system prompt, the tools that it's got access to, etc. So let's use this template. Then we can go to configure environment. And then we can just kind of go through this wizard to flesh out and build up our agent. And as we're making changes to the agent, the file on the right-hand side does get updated as well. So the idea with the console is to kind of, use this interface to build up our agent, add new tools, test it out. And once we're happy, we can simply copy this config. And this is what we'll use in our actual application. You can also try to run this agent just to see how it actually works. Your session is live. Send your first message in the test run panel on the right. They've already given us a piece of text that we can test against. So I'm simply going to run this. And at this point, the idea is just to see if the agent actually does what we expect it to do. This panel is also giving us a lot of valuable information, like the exact API endpoints that should be called and how to call them. And this is cool. If we go over to the transcript, we can indeed see the content that was extracted. So if we wanted to use this agent, we can simply copy this config across to our actual application. And by the way, if you want to see all your running agents, you simply go to this Agents tab. And we will come back to this tab in a second as well when we build our actual applications. But this is where we can see our agents running on Claude's infrastructure. The second way is to run it through the CLI. This is where we can run our managed agent in a terminal window. Really, all you have to do is copy the command relative to your operating system. Then I'll simply install these dependencies. Then we can check if everything was set up correctly by running ant-version. And if you get this value, everything was correct. Now we have to set our Anthropic API key. So copy the key that you created earlier. Then let's paste it into this field and press enter. Then let's run ant-help. And this will show us all the commands that are available within this CLI tool. So this is the CLI for Claude Developer Platform. And here are all the different commands. So if we wanted to create a new agent, now just to show you what this would look like in practice, we can call ant beta agents create, followed by each of those properties as -- the property name, like name is shipit agent with the model and the system prompt. And by the way, these values, like the model property with ID and the value, these map to the exact same properties that we saw in the console. So whether you're looking at the JSON view or the YAML view, we have the name, a description, the model, and within model, we have that ID property. So that's why we have model over here with the specific values inside of it, like ID. So let's run this. Alright, cool, so we finally have our agent. We just have to make a note of this ID. This is really important, as this is how we're going to call our agent going forward. Now we have to set up the next important primitive, and that's the environment. So what we'll do is we'll call ant beta environments followed by create. And of course, we'll give the environment a name, like shipit env, and some config, like this is a type cloud. And for networking, we'll just simply set it to unrestricted. And let's send this. So now that we have our agent and we have an environment that it can work in, we can finally start a session. This is like spinning up Claude Code in a terminal window. So it's effectively, opening up something like Claude Code in a project folder. That's it. We're just kind of going to spin up a session which uses Claude Code in that specific environment. So to create a session, all we have to do is call ant beta sessions create. And now we have to provide our agent ID as well as the environment ID, which we just created now. And we can give our session a unique name, like shipit quick start. Let's run this. And great, we now have the session as well. So what we have to do is just make a note of the session ID. And at this point, I just want to show you what's available in the console. If we go to agents, we can now see our shipit assistant sitting in here. If we go to sessions, we can see the session that we just created, which is currently in idle state. And if we go to environments, we can see the shipit environment as well. Now the session is currently in idle state, so it's waiting for us to send a message. So to see that in action, we can call the send command on events. We can pass it the session ID as well as the event with a user message and the text, hello, introduce yourself in one sentence. Let's run this. Now this simply gave us a unique ID for the message that we just sent, but what we actually want to see is what the agent responded with. And to do that, we can simply call events and stream passing the session ID. And by the way, if we go back to the console, we can see the message that we sent, hello, introduce yourself in one sentence, and we can see the agent's response as well. Now, of course, you can do a lot more with the CLI, but what I'm really interested in is the SDK. This is what we'll realistically use to build actual applications using Claude Managed Agents. For this project, we will be using TypeScript. So if you do want to follow along, you can simply open up a new folder on your machine and install Next.js. You can install Next.js by simply running npx create next app, add latest, space, period. And this will set up a basic boilerplate project in your project folder. And then we can simply create a .env file in the root of the project, and in that file specify a new variable called Anthropic API key and paste in your API key. And that's really it. Now, at the moment, we only have this Next.js boilerplate page, so I'm going to use Claude to replace this application with something else. Hey there, please can you remove the boilerplate Next.js landing page and replace it with a single chat window. This application is called ShipIt. It's an application where users can provide a prompt, and this will fire off instructions to an agent to build whatever application the user wants to build. And this will stream back responses to the front end. Now, I don't want you to worry about the back-end integration yet. Simply focus on the user interface. Keep it simple. And you know what? I do want this to look nice, so I'm going to grab the front-end design skill from skills.sh. Then let's actually install this into this project. And now I'll just say, please use your front-end design skill to make this look awesome. Alright, so while Claude is fixing up the UI, let's actually continue with some context engineering. We're not going to implement any of this ourselves. We're going to let Claude implement all of this for us. Oh, one thing I do want to mention is that we are able to assign tools and MCP connectors. So I'm not going to worry too much about MCP servers in this video because, skills and tools and MCP connectors work pretty much the same way. But what I am going to configure is the front-end design skill. That way, when we ask the agent to build a web app or a website, the agent should be able to create UIs that look a little bit more professional. All right, now, before we build our application, we really do have to provide references to these docs to our agent. So because this is so new, there's absolutely no way Claude will know how all of this works. So it's a good idea to either provide URLs or just copy the page content and provide it to the agent. But there really is a lot of context in here, and I don't want to manually copy the URLs and the content of the pages either. So I'm going to let Claude do all the heavy lifting. So I'll create a folder called docs. Within that, let's do managed agents. Then I'm just going to copy this folder across and say, hey, please can you scrape all of the pages related to managed agents and then store them in this docs/managed agents folder as markdown files. Create some kind of README file at the top level that will act as an index to instruct the agent where to go to find references to different aspects of using managed agents. All right, then let's send this. All right, cool. I love this workflow. It's just so ideal to just, scrape the documentation and store it in the project folder. So every time we want the agent to continue working on this, we can easily point it to the docs. Now let's clear the conversation. I'll go into planning mode and let's say, all right, so I'm trying to build an application to demonstrate the capabilities of Claude Managed Agents. My thinking is to build a simple application called ShipIt. With ShipIt, the user can provide an instruction on a website or a web app that they're trying to build, and this will pass instructions to Claude Managed Agents to use the Anthropic infrastructure to build the actual application. So this means that our Next.js application is basically just a user interface where users can send messages to the agent and the agent's responses should be streamed back. The user should have full visibility on exactly what the agent is doing in the back end. Our remote agent should be an experienced software developer specializing in all sorts of web-based technologies. And very important, we also want to assign a skill to this agent called the front-end design skill. And you know what? I'm not sure if this is going to work or not, but I'm actually just going to copy this URL and say, it's this skill over here. It would be cool if this works. So it's a really easy way to find skills in the marketplace and just tell the agent to assign this specific skill. Now, of course, if you wanted to add like MCP servers or anything else, you can definitely go ahead and do that. Now, since Claude Managed Skills are so new, I've downloaded all the documentation for you. The README file will point you in the right direction on where to find specific topics related to our build. And then I'm just going to pull in this folder. I think we've given the agent more than enough context, so let's see what it comes up with. Alright, cool. So Claude just created the plan, and just at a high level, it's going to install the Anthropic AI SDK. It's going to create shared types for the actual streaming event, so that way we can see what the agent is doing. And it's going to assign the full agent tool set, which includes the bash tools, file ops, web search. So it's basically all the standard like Claude Code types of tools. And of course, we're going to add the front-end design skill as well, which is a custom skill. So I'm not going to go through the plan in detail. I think we have everything we need. So let's go ahead and get Claude to implement all of this. And let's give this a spin. I'll just select the suggestion, a Kanban board like Trello. And we do get this connection error, so I'm simply going to copy this. And when I sent this to Claude, it actually said, all right, the issue is that the front-end design skill doesn't exist in the remote session. And the SDK actually does include a function that it can call to create the skill in a remote system. All right then, so let's try again. We'll try to create a Kanban board like Trello. We can see the agent is currently thinking. And actually, while this is running, let's have a look at the Claude console. I'm just going to refresh the agents. And now we have this ship it builder agent. This is the coding agent that our application just set up. And if we have a look at the tools, it does have access to all of the standard tools like bash, read, write, edit, and whatever else. But it also has access to this skill. So the skill is a unique ID, which represents our front-end design skill. And if we wanted to see more details on the skill, under this build menu, we can go to skills. And here we can see our front-end design skill. Now, of course, we can simply edit the skill if we want, or we can add additional skills as well. So we can download skills from GitHub repositories, create our own, and simply upload the skills into this file, and our agents will have access to those skills in the future. Besides for the skills, we can now go to sessions, and here we can see that the ship it builder agent is currently running. So let's actually click into this guy. We can see the user message, which was a Kanban board like Trello. So we can see the actual tool calls from the agent. We can even view the agent's response from this view as well. And if we wanted to get more details, we can go into this debug tab. And here we can see everything that's happening behind the scenes. And our agent is now running on autopilot. And we can have a look at the tool calls if we want. But the important part here is that this agent is not running on our own infrastructure or within our own application. And because this is a long-running harness, we can keep adding functionality to this, like implement light and dark mode. And now this message is cute. Let's add another feature. Add a Postgres database. Add user authentication. Whatever we want. And we can just kind of sit back and let this agent do its thing. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more Claude Code content. You might also want to consider joining my exclusive school community, Agentic Labs. It's $7 per month for the first 1,000 members, and I just released my very own Agentic Coding Masterclass. And the first few videos are already out. And the nice thing about this masterclass is you get access to these interactive demos. So you can actually learn how LLMs and agents work behind the scenes through interactive presentations. I'll leave a link in the description of this video. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.